One person was killed and 23 injured in a series of explosions in India's Kerala state. 3 blasts were reported from a convention centre in Kalamassery. The cause is not currently clear. More police and fire units are reaching the scene. Kochi City Police Commissioner and anti-terrorist police personnel have been deployed at the spot. And Indian Home Minister Amit Shah spoke to the Chief Minister of Kerala on phone. Teams of the National Investigation Agency and the National Security Guard have been sent to the location. The suspect who killed 18 people in the US state of Maine was found dead after a 3-day manhunt. Police said that the 40-year-old suspect Robert Card had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His body was found in the US town of Lisbon near a recycling center. And according to officials, before the attack, the suspect bought many guns that were found at his home, and a paper note was also found addressed to a quote-unquote loved one, and it contained a passcode to his phone and bank account numbers. Robert Card reportedly had mental health issues. Former US Vice President Mike Pence has dropped his bid for the Republican presidential nomination, ending his campaign for the White House. Mike Pence is the first major candidate to leave a race dominated by his former boss turned rival, Donald Trump. Observers said a former vice president would typically have been a formidable challenger in any primary, but Pence has struggled to raise money and find support base. He had announced his candidacy in Iowa on June 7th, and before visiting many events, town halls, meet and greets. Thousands of Palestinian supporters are rallying in Sydney, calling for an end to the violence in Gaza. Carrying placards and bloodied walls, the protesters chanted pro-Palestinian slogans. Earlier in the day, an Israeli march also took place in Sydney's Martin Place that featured shoes, prams and wheelchairs symbolizing hostages taken by Hamas. Western countries have generally backed what they call Israel's right to self-defense, but there's been a mounting international outcry for a humanitarian pause to allow aid to reach Gaza civilians. Turkey is celebrating its 100th day of formation. Turkish flags adorn buildings alongside banners of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the country's founder and national independence hero. Back in 1923, Atatürk forged a secular Western-looking nation from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. Istanbul, an imperial capital for nearly 5 centuries, flourished as its largest and most populous city. It went through dramatic changes in the past 100 years, both structurally and demographically. Under current President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's 2-decade rule, the country has seen a construction boom. Russia says its armed forces have shot down several Ukrainian fighter jets, and even as Ukraine claimed it hit Russia's artillery systems, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, Moscow repelled multiple attacks by Ukrainian army in Donetsk, Kherson and other places. It also claimed that its defense forces shot down a Ukrainian MiG-29 and multiple drones. The Ukrainian armed forces have reported that dozens of battles took place in frontline areas in over 24 hours. Britain's King Charles III is arriving in Kenya for a state visit in a trip that is full of symbolism. The state visit from October 31st to November 3rd will be his first to a Commonwealth nation since ascending the monarchy last year. King Charles will be greeted by Kenyan President William Ruto when he arrives in the capital, Nairobi. The two countries have enjoyed a close relationship since independence, despite a prolonged struggle against colonial rule, also known as the Mau Mau Rebellion, in which thousands of Kenyans were killed.
God save the King!
Displaced Palestinians are sheltering in makeshift tents at Khan Yunis on the southern Gaza Strip after Israel's military on Saturday reissued their call to evacuate the northern Gaza Strip ahead of an impending Israeli operation. Israel, which says Hamas has placed its weapons and forces among civilians, has been telling Gaza's residents to move south for their own safety. More than 1.4 million Gazans have fled their homes for temporary shelters under Israel's heaviest ever bombardment. Colombian President Gustavo Petro said the abducted mother of Liverpool soccer player Luis Diaz has been rescued. The national police confirmed the rescue of Diaz's mother, and officials are still searching for his missing father. The Colombian Attorney General's office had assembled a team of investigators after their abduction in northern Colombia. Premier League club Liverpool had signed Colombia winger Diaz in a multi-million-dollar deal in January 2022. At least 32 people were killed and 14 remained missing after a mine fire in Kazakhstan. And according to the Ministry for Emergency Situations, 206 of 252 people at the Kostenko mine were evacuated after a methane blast. Expressing condolences, Kazakhstan president declared it is a national day of mourning. The ArcelorMittal company has suspended operation of its coal unit mines for 24 hours for gas protection checks, and the government is in talks to nationalize the company that operates the country's biggest steel mill. Palestinians bid farewell to a man killed by Israeli forces during a raid on a West Bank town. According to an eyewitness, Palestinian youth threw stones at the troops who responded with gunfire. Palestinian Health Ministry also said that Israeli forces killed 3 Palestinians in the West Bank overnight. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has told reporters that Israel has no interest in expanding the fighting beyond Gaza. Hollywood actor Matthew Perry, who gained immense fame for his role as Chandler Bing in the television series Friends, was found dead in his home in Los Angeles. Various media outlets citing law enforcement sources reported that Matthew Perry was found dead in a hot tub or jacuzzi. Perry was best known for his longtime role, Chandler Bing, in the hugely successful Friends that ran for 10 seasons. He also starred in films such as 17 Again, 3 to Tango and Don't Look Up. Fans worldwide mourned the loss of the actor. Drivers are waiting in long lines at service stations in Buenos Aires and other cities in Argentina due to fuel shortages. Argentina is already strained by an economic crisis with inflation close to 140%, and the government and oil companies have said fuel shipments are starting to arrive and that the shortage should be eased in the coming days. Thousands of athletes ran in a Delhi marathon despite unhealthy air quality in the Indian capital. The government had a Run for Unity marathon to mark the birth anniversary of one of the founding fathers of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Participants were seen running in different categories under a blanket of haze and dust. Pollution is a growing problem in India's capital, New Delhi, especially during winters, caused by thick smog triggered by vehicle emissions, smoke and dust, leading to breathing problems for many people. Saudi Arabia's Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman is expected to visit Washington on Monday. Khalid bin Salman is the brother of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and the visit is taking place just days after Israel expanded its ground operation in Gaza. Riyadh had condemned Israel's offensive on Saturday. It also comes as the US and Saudi Arabia expressed concerns that the fighting between Israel and Hamas could widen into a regional war. He was the former ambassador to the US and is the highest-ranking Saudi official to visit Washington since the Biden administration assumed office. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived in Nepal's capital city, Kathmandu, for a 4-day trip at the invitation of Nepalese Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda. It will be Guterres' first visit to the country after he assumed office on January 1, 2017. According to UN officials, Guterres will address Nepal's parliament and hold bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Prachanda, President Ramchandra Paudel and other senior officials. Apart from the Himalayan belt, Guterres will also be visiting Lumbini, the birthplace of Gautam Buddha, and Pokhara. Mexico's Acapulco city is devastated by Hurricane Otis that pounded the city with heavy winds of 266 kilometers per hour. 39 lives were killed, lost as the storm flooded homes, damaged properties worth billions. 4 people were reportedly missing. Meanwhile, Mexican president accused his opponents of exaggerating the scale of the disaster. He issued a 24-minute video on social media to update the country on the situation. The intensity of Otis resulted in power cuts. The United Auto Workers have expanded its strike at General Motors to include an engine plant in Spring Hill that General Motors said supplies 9 factories producing several of its best-selling and most profitable vehicles. The strike was announced on the day the union struck a tentative deal with Stellantis. UAW President Sean Fain said that he ordered the walkout at the Spring Hill manufacturing complex because General Motors is unwilling to accept contract terms based on deals struck at Ford and Stellantis. The car maker said that it was disappointed by the UAW strike at Spring Hill and that it still, quote-unquote, seeks to reach an agreement as quickly as possible. The Spring Hill plant is the largest General Motors facility in North America with nearly 4,000 total employees. China's aviation regulator said that it will increase domestic flights to 34% above pre-pandemic levels, a move that will further boost the recovery of Chinese airlines. China's top airlines reported their first quarterly profits in more than 3 years on Friday, and this has ignited industry hopes that China's big 3 state carriers will finally step out of the post-COVID-19 difficulties. The Civil Aviation Administration of China will roll out its winter and spring season flight plan on Sunday, which will last until March 30th. Now, there will be 96,651 domestic flights a week, or 34% higher than the same period 4 years ago, with 7,202 new weekly flights. The regulator said that the increase in domestic flights focuses on connections between regional and hub airports like Shanghai, Beijing and Guangzhou. Switzerland may see interest rate hikes soon. Swiss National Bank's vice chairman said in an interview that the central bank may need to tighten its monetary policy further depending on how inflation develops in the country. Last month, the central bank held its policy interest rates unchanged at 1.75%, noting that inflation had eased. He said growth would probably be subdued next year and that unemployment was expected to rise slightly. The Swiss franc has hit its strongest level since 2015 against the euro last Friday, on the back of risk aversion due to the Israel-Hamas war, as well as broad weakness in the euro.